All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video as Robert Saleh has officially been hired by the Tennessee Titans to be their head coach. Diana Rossini reporting the news just tonight at the end of the national championship game. Robert Saleh back with the 49ers this year and really did an incredible job as the defensive coordinator. When you think about the fact they lost Bosa, they kept going. They lost Warner, they kept going. They had, youth all over their defense. Guys like Tatum Bethune, C.J. West, Alfred Collins, Upton Stout. In a playoff game, Marquise Siegel. He's coaching linebackers that they had to pick up off the street like Garrett Wallow and Eric Kendricks to play, and then they beat the Eagles and in Philly in the playoffs. And Robert Saleh did an incredible job. So I think the Niners knew that this was likely what was going to happen. Now, they weren't envisioning this, right? When the Niners hired Robert Saleh to come back, they saw Robert Saleh with Bosa and Warner and maybe themselves winning a Super Bowl or at least contending for a Super Bowl. And then, I think they thought that Robert Saleh was highly likely to get another coaching gig. So then you factor in what happened this year around the league, because it's a copycat league. Teams notice what other teams are doing well, and then they copy it. So who's on top right now? Well, look at the D'Amico Ryans had a great year, defensive coach. Mike McDonald has had a great impact in 2 years in Seattle, defensive coach. Who's the coach of the year in the NFL this year? Mike Vrabel, most likely, defensive coach. So these owners look around and they're like, hey, you know what? We've seen some good young defensive coaches step in and have success right away. Let's go get ourselves the best young defensive coach that's out there to run our show. And so they quickly arrive at Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh is also a good guy. He's a family guy. He's proven that he can handle the media in New York with the Jets. He just didn't have a quarterback. So he comes back to the 49ers, and it's one and done. Now, the Niners kind of knew that this was going to happen. They just didn't think it was going to look quite like this. So they're prepared. And I really think they quickly pivot and announce Gus Bradley as the defensive coordinator. There's been talk that Raheem Morris, who was let go in Atlanta, that he is tight with Shanahan, and he might be a guy that they talk to, and that would be an interesting name. There was some speculation earlier about Jeff Ulbrich possibly being in the mix, but Ulbrich's going to stay where he's at. So I think Gus Bradley makes perfect sense. Gus Bradley has got a great resume. He was the guy who designed the Seattle defense, and he's got a great eye for personnel. He's the guy who helped put together Brandon Browner, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. And I just think that Gus Bradley came here this year with the idea of, I will be there. I will be as much of a help to Robert Saleh as possible. Shanahan had never worked with Bradley before, so Saleh knew Bradley and brought him in. Now Shanahan has a great affinity for Gus Bradley. I just think the Niners brought Gus Bradley here to take over for Robert Saleh when Robert Saleh got a job, and they thought it would take a year, maybe two. And so I think Bradley slides right into that position, and I think it's a great hire. Gus Bradley's a proven entity, and he's got a good eye for personnel. He's a tough guy. He's been an NFL head coach. He's a smart guy. He's a little bit older. You could argue that he's got a more extensive coaching resume than Robert Saleh himself. So, Bradley, I think, was brought here last year with Robert Saleh so that the Niners could maintain a little continuity on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't think there's any question about it. Robert Saleh going to Tennessee now leads the Niners to going to Gus Bradley as their defensive coordinator. What does that mean? Well, Gus Bradley's always liked big corners. So I kind of wonder about Renardo Green's future with the 49ers, just because he's not the biggest bodied corner, and he had that dust up with Shanahan. Darrell Luter is exactly the kind of big bodied corner that Gus Bradley prefers. But we'll see. I mean, he did not play particularly well at the end of the year in certain spots, and he was just a step behind, in a number of instances. But I think Gus Bradley is going to definitely be the hire, and And I think it will be a good hire. I really do. I think it will give them the continuity that they seek. They can bring back. They like Johnny Holland. They like Chris Kasarik. They like Daniel Bullocks. They like their continuity. They love, they love their continuity of their defensive coaching staff. And I think I could see a promotion for KJ Wright. I don't think there's any doubt that KJ Wright could get a promotion, and he could be, maybe the assistant to Gus Bradley. Bradley may bring in somebody that he knows from one of his previous stops to assist him. But I do think it's going to be Gus Bradley, and I think that was the plan all along. And I think the Niners are scheduled to talk on Wednesday. We're going to hear from Lynch and Shanahan. And my guess is Wednesday we're going to get some details on possibly Gus Bradley being the defensive coordinator replacing Robert Saleh. Now, I think this is just step one in multiple steps where the 49ers lose key personnel. I think they're also most likely going to lose Clay Kubiak, who just finished interviewing with the Raiders. I think Clay Kubiak, a lot of people want a play caller, and he's been a play caller. And I know the Steelers have interest, the Raiders have interest. I think Clay Kubiak's going to get a job because there's teams that have invested a lot of money in young quarterbacks. There's teams, I think a good fit for the Raiders, for example, is that they draft Fernando Mendoza with the first pick in the draft and then hire an offensive play caller like Clay Kubiak to groom Mendoza there in Vegas. So if you ask me, I think there's a very good chance that the Niners are going to wind up losing both their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinator in the same coaching cycle. So, they knew that was the case. They had guys that were going to be highly coveted. I think the Saleh one is more of an expectation, which is why Bradley was brought in for the continuity purposes. And then the Clay Kubiak thing, we'll see where that goes. But I just think there's so many teams out there that they prefer to run the Shanahan scheme. And here's a guy that was Shanahan's right-hand man. And you heard Shanahan, he wants to keep him. It's like, hey, would you let Clay Kubiak go somewhere else to be an offensive coordinator? He's like, no, I will not. We will not. He calls plays here. He's our offensive coordinator. And you could see that Shanahan really respects those guys, likes those guys, and would like to very much keep them. And it sounds like they're not going to be able to keep either. So this is going to be a huge year for the 49ers on both sides of the ball. Not that every year isn't. But look at what they're up against now. Their division is stacked. It's the best division in football. You could argue that the true powerhouses of the sport reside in their division. And you're going to have to be able to stop, you're going to have to be able to compete with your offense against two really good defenses that right now have the upper hand. The 49ers offensive line needs to be upgraded significantly. The 49ers weapons, they need a lot more dangerous receivers. They got to rebuild their entire receiving core. Are they going to pay Jawan Jennings $20 million? I don't think so. I think you're going to see a number of trades. I think that's the other thing that's coming. We'll talk more about that later in the week, but I would not be surprised if you saw Ayuk involved in a trade, if you saw Renardo Green involved in a trade, if you saw Ricky Pearsall involved in a trade, if you saw the 49ers trade up for a particular player in the draft. That wouldn't surprise me. I think you're going to see a Mac Jones trade most likely. So I think you're going to see a handful of trades. This will be about free agency. It will be about the draft. We'll see if Jed loosens up his pocketbook. He didn't spend hardly anything last year because they had so much dead cap. And in a year where the Niners had a ton of dead cap, like over $100 million of dead cap, they still found a way to, go 12-5 in the regular season, win 13 games, and put out a very, very competitive product. So I think it was a good year. But now you start to lose guys. And Saleh's gone, and Kubiak's going to be gone. The Niners are most likely going to lose Josh Williams, a front office guy, which should result in them getting 2 third-round compensatory picks for the minority hiring practice rule. But I think Josh is likely to get hired away. He's one of my good SI Wildcats. He's go Cats, get 'em Cats, go get 'em Cats. But good luck to Josh Williams. I think he's probably going to be running his own show shortly as a personnel guy. So big news on a Monday. Bye-bye Robert Saleh. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera, soon to open in Petaluma. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them Krug sent you. Also, thanks to Sleeper. 49er football season is presented by Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform in the world. It's a one-stop shop. You get blazing fast news, real-time stats, group chat, and of course, Sleeper picks for daily fantasy. Use promo code Larry. Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Links in the description. Terms and conditions do apply. And thanks to you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.